Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We have a very special guest today, Air Force veteran, physician's assistant, and host of 21 Gun podcast, Kevin Sullivan. How's it going?
Going great. How's it going down there in Texas?
Texas things. It's getting warmer by the day.
Yeah.
So you were in the Air Force. What'd you do?
I was I went in to be TAC-P. It was actually right after it was the classic story, right? September 12th, 2001. I actually was my enlistment date. And I went to a bunch of recruiters and I was like, I want to do something really cool. And the Air Force guy was there and he's like, come see what a TAC-P does. And he sold me on it. So they sent me to officer candidate school because I had my bachelor's degree. And while I was there, I guess all possible flyers have to take like a battery of flying exams. And I scored well. And I had none. My whole life, I had no anticipation to ever fly an aircraft. And then they came to me and they're like, hey, do you want to fly? I was like, I don't know. I guess so. Let's do this. So I ended up being a flyer, an aviator, navigator, backseat guy, especially in C-130s down at Bragg.
So what does a backseat navigator do? Because I've jumped out of those things before, but I never really pay attention to the front of the aircraft.
A lot of mission planning, a lot of weapon systems, defensive systems. We're also a set of eyes. Like if we do some low levels, which Fort Bragg isn't really, there's not a lot of hills there, so it's not that exciting. Got a lot of drop zones and stuff, but just being that extra set of eyes, watching engines, watching flight controls, and then being the guy that yells green light to make sure you guys land on the drop zone. Lots of math and stuff, which is funny because I suck at math. I've always sucked at math. I've had a learning disability, dyslexia my whole life, and it was one of those things that I never really disclosed to anyone who asked. So it became a challenge, but if you ask any aviator, they're the best in their squadron. So I was the best nav that was down at 41st. So it didn't really affect me.
Yeah, it's funny. I know a lot of snipers who suck at math, but they're good at sniper math. It's the only math they know.
Yeah. It's real world stuff, right? Yeah. If you look at it the way, I don't know, the way physics and everything works, it just kind of it made sense to me. So yeah, it wasn't that hard.
And tell me about when you got out of the military. You were in from what, 2003 to 2007, is that right?
Yep. So it wasn't the career that I had anticipated. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. It was all kind of like like I said, the classic September 11th happened. I want to join and I want to do stuff. I was kind of aimless, 23, I think, when I joined. And so if I made it a career, I'd make it a career. If I didn't, whatever. We were caught up, especially in the C-130 community, in that ops tempo back then. Remember, this is after the initial invasion of Iraq. We had the surge of like 06, but it got really violent 04, 05. So we were gone all the time. The stress started building up, and I did what every good operations officer does: is you drink yourself to sleep to get rid of that stress, and you don't handle it the way that you're supposed to handle it. No one teaches you how to handle stress. It got to me. I didn't realize at the time this was doing some damage to my brain, which is why we have the epidemic of post-traumatic stress, especially for the guys and girls who served over there. So we were flying back from some mission, and I don't know what happened. I have what we call retrograde amnesia, but I woke up in the back of the aircraft. The loadmaster said that he had found me kind of crumpled down at the bottom of the steps like I had fallen. So it was a traumatic brain injury that, on top of all the other, shit that was going on in my brain, was not a conducive to flying. So I got put on the typical antidepressants, pain medications, sleeping medications, just the whole 9 yards. Life kind of sucked for me, and I got medically retired. So it wasn't in the plans. It sucked very bad for a long time. But you adapt and you figure things out.
Sure. Yeah. So you get out, it's kind of at one of the height there I guess there were multiple heights of this war, but at the
Sure.
height of the surge, at least in 2007, that's I was there from '07 to '08.
Okay.
um it was pretty hairy, I guess. I mean, we had a good time, but uh it was the '05 '06 period was particularly brutal because it was the same level of kinetic activity without the same amount of support on the ground, more or less, is a good way to
Right.
describe that, I think. Um, and then you get out under circumstances that you probably didn't want to, right? Like
Yeah.
your entire life is defined by this career you have, and then all of a sudden you can't do that anymore, and that's
Yep.
got to suck, right?
It's I'm not anyone, it's a common story. It's actually a really common story. I got out, and like I said, you're the best, at least in your mind, you're the best aviator, right? You're at the peak of your career. You think nothing can stop you, and then suddenly the US government says, yeah, no more missions for you, no more anything. You are broken. You're going to be taking these pills for the rest of your life, and you're going to feel like shit, and you're out in the world. You're a civilian again. And a lot, I mean, I doing my show, my podcast, I've interviewed hundreds of veterans that found themselves in the same situation. What do? I'm trained to drop Humvees and paratroopers out of the back of an aircraft and dodge surface air missiles. I don't know what I'm going to do in the real world. I was aimless beforehand. I got some BS degree in history. I just had nothing, and I felt like I had just gotten married. What am I going to do? Like, what am I going to provide for my family? Luckily, and I don't know what it is. It might have been my upbringing, or I could have laid in bed and been depressed and drank, which was, I did it for a couple of weeks, but it got old quick, and my wife didn't let that happen. So I decided I'm just gonna freaking suffer through this. How many people in history have gone through worse, right? Lost
Mm.
their legs, bad burns, whatever. I'm like, my thing is nothing, right? I have to take some pills, and I got some side effects. So I was like, I'm gonna learn to help people. And I started from scratch. I went to like a local community college, learned how to draw blood, and then decided that I was going to go to PA school and see where that took me. So that's what I did. After those 2 weeks, I just hit the books, and somehow, I don't know how, honestly, don't know how it happened. A few years later, I graduated as a physician assistant.
Yeah, that's how that's how the Stoics would recommend responding to something. Not the depressive 2 week part, but
Yeah,
the I guess one of the mantras. I think it was Seneca who said this, but it's something to the effect of whenever you're going through particularly hard times and you think you can't make it, understand that the fact that you've made it so far means that you can. Right?
sure,
It's like
absolutely.
you've already you've already you've already passed every roadblock in your life up to this point, and that is the evidence that you can continue. And I think one of the things that I like to tell people, particularly in your situation or the similar situation I was in at the time, it's you have to get back to fundamentals. You have to understand that your your level of fulfillment in life, which is the word that people mean when they say happiness. You know what I mean? Like, happiness is you see your fucking dog and get a dopamine hit or something, or you see
Right.
your kid, get a base hit on the field or graduate high school and you're proud of them. That's happiness. Fulfillment means you're content with your life. You feel like you're serving your purpose. And getting back to the fundamentals of that means, what are the skills I have, both developed and biological, that I can use to benefit other people, starting with my family first. That's typically how human beings have found fulfillment throughout the years. And what I like to tell people is that the harder things get for you, the bigger the opportunity. Because if you can turn your pain and suffering and struggle or whatever into empathy for other people, you can save two lives, yours and theirs, right? And that's how we
Sure.
typically find ourselves again, is in the service of other people.
Yeah. It's difficult. It's real difficult. That's why we have so many people that are struggling to find that within yourself. I mean, it's the basis of practicing medicine. I have so many people that are sick because of their lifestyle choices, because of things that are completely within their control. But to tap into whatever that is that causes someone to say, I'm going to break away from the comfort of sitting in my bedroom with the shades drawn with a bottle of Jack Daniels and feel bad for myself, to still feeling bad, but putting that behind you and putting the work in to become something else. I mean, like I said, if I had the answer for how to tap that in, or tap that potential within people, I'd be a billionaire, and we'd have no issues. So yeah, it's a challenging thing. And I don't know, I honestly don't know what it was that caused me to do that, but I'm glad I did. Because I mean, obviously we know that the other choice doesn't pay dividends in the long run.
Sure, yeah. We do have a lot of people struggling even today. Um, I mean, we haven't been, aside from the special operations community, we haven't really been at war in earnest for some time now, right? It's
Right.
things have slowed down quite a bit, but what we're seeing is a precipitous rise in veterans and active duty suicide, and it's not concentrated where you think it would be. It's not active duty infantry people. Like the National Guard and reserves have a much higher rate of suicide than active duty infantry people do right now, than special operations do right now. Um, I don't think, and the reason I think this is because these people separate from the tribe and go back to, wherever they're from, and they can't find that sense of purpose again. I genuinely think that's what it is. There's a lot of people struggling. I don't think it's because they can't figure out how to help other people either. I think it's because we're treating this entire generation of veteran like victims instead of assets. You know what I mean? I don't think,
Right.
I don't,
Yeah.
I don't, because I know this to be the case for myself and many other people that I've worked with and discussed these issues with. But these men and women don't need a pat on the back or a shoulder to cry on. They need a fucking mission. They need something to do with all the talent, energy, perspective, and experience they have. They need a mission that's going to make their lives feel worthwhile. And right now, what we're giving them is essentially nothing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what we're really giving them is a total vacuum, and no guidance on how to reach out and help people and stuff like that. It's fucked up.
Plus I mean, the medications that they put you on. I mean, I don't remember how old I was, but let's say 33, and I had half the energy I do now in my 40s. I was falling asleep in my office. I wasn't there for my kids. I was completely addicted to Ambien. I couldn't sleep without it. Painkiller, everything else that was just given to you I think it's out of the benevolence of the military, because this is what they had. This is all they had. Um, and then what you would mention there about, the suicide situation. I think America, thanks to Hollywood, maybe they think the suicide is because, you picture the guy there with his service pistol,
Mm-hmm.
reliving a battle somewhere and hearing the bombs go off and hearing the bullets fly by and the screams and shit. But it's not that. From my experience with people that we've lost with some of the organizations I've worked with, it's exactly what you said. This loss of something, this meaning within them. The other thing too you got to remember is, in the military, you're a cog, right? So when I was on the C-130, if they said, hey, the mission dictates that you're going to fly through that, thunderstorm because that's what we need you to do, then yes, sir. And you fly your aircraft through a thunderstorm. They put us in situations where we're exposed to radiation, depleted uranium, JP8, which isn't really good for you, concussive, even small concussive blows, like, if you're manning a Ma Deuce or something like that. And this creates a very hostile environment in your brain to operate. So these people that find themselves in that situation where the only answer is suicide, you have to look at it, at least I look at it as a medical provider, in the same light as someone who has a terminal cancer, right? Someone dies of a terminal cancer. You don't say, oh, that dude was weak. He should have fought that brain cancer, whatever. It's the same thing. I don't think they find themselves in an environment where they can actually make the decision not to pull the trigger or whatever they decide to do. And, luckily there's, organizations and groups that are picking up on this. We do some work with Grunt Style Foundation, and they're heavy on the radiation exposure and different chemical exposures. I work with Warrior Angels Foundation, same thing. We do all these alternative therapies to identify the risk factors that can put somebody in this environment of of, possible suicide. So it's moving. We're going in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, it feels like it sometimes, but there's still a very broad misunderstanding, even inside of the VA and the broader veteran medical community about what this is. You're completely right. This Hollywood scenario where somebody is having flashbacks um, about some particular gunfight they were in or getting blown up or some shit. I mean, maybe to some degree that's a stimulus for things. It can certainly fuck up your sympathetic nervous system, but
Sure.
almost always it's the veteran feels alone and disassociated from their family, friends, community, and you're talking about somebody who has, like any other, I guess, service-minded or A-type person, has a strong biological urge above all else to provide and protect for those close to them,
Mm-hmm.
their family, friends, their country, whatever it is. And now they feel like they can't do it, right? And
Right.
nothing feels worse for, at least I don't know about uh, how women process this because I'm not a woman, but nothing feels worse as a man than letting down your family and your friends and your team. Nothing feels worse than feeling like you're not contributing, and that turns to nihilism very quickly. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
and you see, and it's kind of a cascading effect too. So you start to disassociate. You form a very negative internal opinion of yourself, and then you don't want to share that with other people, right? You don't want to infect your friends and your family with your negativity or your perceived worthlessness. So you start to pull away from them and you lose what little support you have left, right? But
Yeah.
the sad irony of that situation is if you stop thinking about yourself for a minute and just start helping other people, all of this shit will go away. That's how it works. I mean,
Yeah.
it is, and that is reductive. Certainly, it takes time, and you still need to get your mind right. But putting other people before yourself—that's what you've made a life of doing. Like
Yeah.
every single person we're talking about here made a conscious decision to put other people ahead of their own life, but just by signing up for the military in the first place. So, you know, the idea that we're going to coddle these people when they come home instead of giving them the next mission, or the idea that as the veteran, you think that somehow pills or therapy, or not that there isn't some used for talk therapy to kind of flush this stuff out, but um, the idea that these mechanisms are going to work for you in the absence of some kind of purpose in your life is nonsense. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's a Band-Aid on a bullet hole.
Yeah. Well, we also build a foundation of sand. Every veteran that I know has struggled has told themselves a lie every day. I told myself a lie. I was weak, right? What the hell happened to me? How come my crew, or several crews that I flew with, how come this didn't happen to anyone else, right? So you walk around and you consistently call yourself, I'm a piece of shit. I'm weak. I couldn't do what they could do. I'm obviously less than everyone, and you believe it. You build this persona that is not rooted, like you just said, it's not rooted in reality. For it, just by joining the military, you're already setting yourself apart from others. But it doesn't matter. You keep telling yourself this lie, you keep telling yourself this lie, and eventually you believe it. I found that there's two methods that actually worked for me. One was cognitive. Now, there's something called cognitive behavioral therapy, which I guess I did. I don't remember. Maybe when I was in the service, which I didn't find any value. I believe it was cognitive processing therapy, where you like you have a notebook and you write down all the stuff that you basically tell yourself. I failed my crew. Okay, you're in the court of law. Defend that statement. And then you try to put your defense, but your defense is all bullshit, right? I failed my crew because I was weak. Okay, prove that you were weak. I got hurt. Is getting hurt a weakness? And you expose these lies you tell yourself, and you almost strip away the ego. That's the first part. The second part too is psychedelics that I got into ketamine with a therapist. And same thing. What it did is it stripped away that ego. It stripped away that person that lives with me every day telling me these lies, and suddenly it's clarity. You can address these issues, you can address these things that you're dealing with without the 43 years of experience that makes up Kevin Sullivan. So there's methods, they work. You just have to I guess you have to find them and do the work yourself and trust it. I didn't trust any of that until I went through it. And I was like, oh shit, I feel better.
Yeah, I feel like what we lean on the most. So the typical drug program that was common with the military and with the VA for a long time was essentially drugs, SSRIs, and experiential avoidance, right? So CPT and CBT kind of came in 2009 to 11 time period. It started becoming popular, but the first decade of war, it was just like, take
Xanax and
take ibuprofen, drink
Prozac.
water, and fucking face out and pull security. I mean, it's the same shit you've been hearing since boot camp. But yeah, experiential avoidance just doesn't work ever. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, I understand that some people, like everybody needs guardrails in their life. There's no question about that, because, having guardrails in your life is like having a good diet and having a good immune system. It's just, it benefits you, so you don't have to be switched on all the time. You make good habits and stuff. But if you're so captured by something that you can't go anywhere near it, then it has control over you whether you go near it or not. And that is a big problem when you're talking about something that's psychological, because it's coming at some point. You can't control your thoughts 24 hours a day. It's just not possible. And, when we talk about the stories of people who we are proud of, or people that we look up to, one of the predominant factors is resilience, right? It's not that they went through hard times. It's that they came through hard times and became better for it. That's what we respect. So for some reason, I don't know why it is, but we have this, our community, maybe because we thought we were super tough or some shit, have this idea that now, because we're struggling, that, yeah, like you said, somehow we're fucking weak. All of a sudden, It's like, no, you're a human being with fucking trillions of neurons, and the pathway has gotten fucked up, either through your sympathetic nervous system, or through the limbic system, or through traumatic brain injury or some shit like that. Something's off, but you can fix it. There's very, very rarely are these problems unfixable. You know what I mean?
I've seen them. I've fixed people.
Yeah.
I've been part of the program where it's like, we take guys who are on the verge of just, a good friend of mine, Andrew Marr, who's actually down in your neck of the woods right now. They're working on a bill to trying to get it through the Texas Senate. We just got it passed through the House last week for these alternative therapies. And if you listen to his story, which I think you can hear it on Joe Rogan, one of his shows a couple years ago, but he was on the brink. This is a special forces operator that, had, I can't remember, a decade of experience under his belt, and he couldn't function, right? He couldn't bring himself to the standards that someone like the Green Berets, or a group like the Green Berets, holds you to. And if you don't identify that, you take someone who's at that level and then suddenly can't operate in a I don't know, a family environment, then you have to identify what's going on. One of the things I ask a lot of the vets that I interview is, especially with the active duty guys, so what are they doing now for you, right? Because I've been out since 2007. That's a long freaking time ago. It doesn't feel that long ago, but it was 13, 14 years. What are they doing? Like, are they preparing you for, these stressors, these things that are coming? Do they teach you proper nutrition? Do they teach you meditation? Do they teach you healthy ways to? And most of the guys say no at this point. No, especially the NCOs. It's still in the realm of, oh, you're going to, I don't know what they call it in the Army. I think they called it mental health in the Air Force. Oh, you're going to mental health, pussy. And it's like, and that stigma is still there. When did you get out? How long ago?
The latter part of 2010.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, that was 13 years ago in itself. Gosh, no, I said that wrong. That's been 16, almost 17 years for me. But yeah, was there anything then? I mean, in the 3 years that I wasn't in when you were in, were they identifying? Were they helping you to I guess, de-stress and give yourself a more, we'll call it, neuropermissive environment?
There was definitely no prophylaxis, none that I was aware of anyways. So, and maybe I find this hard to believe, but we certainly know more today than we knew back then. That's just how it works. But
Yeah.
We did know that sleep hygiene is important. We know that
Yep.
diet is super important. We know that supplementation is important. We've been tracking low testosterone amongst TBI guys for fucking 15 years now and have done nothing to address that systemically inside the military.
Sure. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, some friends of mine and I have been doing it for maybe 5 years now, just helping the special operations community stay fit and when it comes to their hormones and stuff. But certainly not when I was in. Most people would just go to mental health. One, there were shitbags that would go when they got in trouble to try to get out of trouble. But
Okay.
the people who actually went looking for help, usually it was like when they were getting ready to get out of the military, right? They were just kind of out processing, so now they were going to take some time to decompress. But no prophylaxis that I was ever aware of. And
Yeah.
to my understanding from people that are in right now, that's still the case.
Yeah. It's a shame to some degree. I don't know, like when I was in my 20s, I don't know how well I would receive that kind of, I guess we'll call it the hippy dippy side of the military. Um, I would hope that I mean, in our squadron, we had a bar. That's how you de-stress. You have a bad flight, you have a near miss or something crazy. You head out to the bar, or you go up to the squadron bar and you start, putting drinks down and talk about what happened. And that's the environment. And that's the environment I wanted, not knowing that it's going to pay some pretty negative dividends down the line. But yeah. So, and then it becomes a cultural thing, right? And you just repeat what seems to work for you when you're in your 20s, but it does not play out the same way when you're out of the military and you're in your 30s now, 40s, and trying to solve it the same way. So, yeah, I'm hoping that it becomes more mainstream. The optimistic side of me thinks it will, just because of things like the bill we're passing down in Texas, and having bipartisan support is huge. I mean, it was I'm going to say it wrong. It was Texas House Bill 4185, I think. It was just last Friday that it was passed, and it was 142 to nothing. So it was unanimously passed, utilizing what you just said. One of the main things we utilize is testosterone replacement. And we're getting people, I went through the program, I'm on no medicines now, zero, except for testosterone replacement and a few supplements to keep my brain operating where it's supposed to operate. But yeah, we're having nothing but good success. So we're hoping that, I think it's next week, we're going before the Senate. I might go down to testify. I got to figure out if I can make it down there. Either way, I think with a unanimous passing in the House, I think we'll do well in the Senate. And then, keep doing things like that. Keep having groups, advocate, push these alternative therapies, these things that actually save lives. We have the data, and maybe it'll become mainstream. It's my hope.
Yeah, just to address how fucking stupid our approach has been thus far. When it comes to post-traumatic stress disorder, when there's if you want to call it a flare-up or an inciting act, whether it's a traumatic event or something else, if you're able to get to REM sleep that night of the event, you reduce the chances of getting PTSD by about 70%. And if you
Really?
and if you get REM sleep the second night after that, it's an additional 30%. Now, alcohol will stop you from reaching REM sleep, especially if you're binge drinking. So if you have a drink, maybe you can reach REM sleep. It depends on your metabolism. But if you have multiple drinks, if you get to a blood alcohol level of about 0.08, which is the legal limit for driving, you're not going to reach REM sleep, which means you're definitely not going to get the kind of recovery you need from that event. So what happens is when you reach REM sleep after that event, it essentially, instead of that event and the neural pathway it created in your mind becoming permanent, it gets flushed, right? So it resets your sympathetic nervous system. You don't turn that into a core memory, essentially, is what happens, right? But it's true. It's our go-to. That's what we do if we had a rough day.
Yeah.
Oh, I need a drink. Like, no, you don't. You need the opposite of a drink. Drink on the nights when you had a good day, right? Like if you like to drink, that's what you should do. You should drink to have fun. You should never drink to recover, because it doesn't work. I mean, it actually it makes it way worse.
I wonder if Ambien is the same, because we were handed out Ambien like it was candy. No,
Mm.
it's how you slept, and it's addictive, and people don't realize that. Take it every day for 30. I mean, the VA used to send me 30 pills every month. It would be out in my mailbox, and they're wondering why uh, you don't recover. And I would assume, because the more I'm thinking about it, the mechanism of action is pretty similar to alcohol in the brain. So yeah, right there.
Yeah, I would have to look into that. I'm not entirely sure about how Ambien affects REM sleep, but I'm sure it's not good. You know,
Yeah,
any
can't be.
anything that's anything that is affecting your sleep cycle in any way is not going to be good for that. I mean, you're better off, to be honest, sitting in a dimly lit room with maybe a candle or a fucking dim headlamp if you're deployed at the time, and reading a book until you fall asleep. That would be a much better treatment than drinking booze or than taking Ambien for sure.
Absolutely.
Just
Yeah.
physiologically speaking. So, you said before the show you do a lot with you're a PA. You do a lot of work with veterans and TBI stuff. What's going on in the TBI world right now?
Well, hopefully good stuff. I've been working with Dr. Mark Gordon. Again, if you're interested in him, he was on, I think, with Andrew on the Joe Rogan podcast a few years back. That would explain everything that he does better than I can. But he identified the biomarkers of traumatic brain injury, and believe it or not, they're similar to post-traumatic stress. So, for an example, my buddy Andrew, who was a breacher with the special forces, right? How many concussive blasts did he experience in his career? I assume thousands. He had several, I think he was in I'm not infantry or anything. So what do they call it when it's a building IED? Like they lure you into a building and blow it up.
I mean, it's just a baited ambush, I guess, in that regard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he got into a situation like that. And Gordon started looking at athletes. He was working with, I just met him a couple weeks ago, Mark Ripken. I don't know. He used to be the quarterback for the
Ripon, I think is right.
Ripon.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's how you say it.
Yeah. Super nice dude for the Skins back in the
Mm-hmm.
day. And he started looking at athletes and people that had these injuries, and he looked at the blood work, and he saw their testosterone levels low. He saw their inflammation levels high, and at the time it was, let's try to replace these chemicals that are in an imbalance, almost like a fingerprint. We'll say it's like that. You can have a TBI fingerprint in your blood work. And he was doing it with, $20,000-$30,000 medications. And he was smart enough to say, what is the end game? We give you pill A. What are we looking for? Or pill A plus pill B equals pill C, or outcome C. What are we looking for with outcome C? And can we reach outcome C by using the building blocks, a natural physiological building blocks? Something like pregnenolone is a major component. DHEA. These are all stuff you can buy on Amazon. And so he followed that. He started putting people on this regimen, pregnenolone, DHEA, fish oil, things of that nature. And through something called an MPQ, or a questionnaire, people's symptoms sometimes within weeks improved quite a bit. And the numbers always favored that this is doing something. 75%, 80% of the people that would try this protocol would work. So he brought it to the DOD. He did a trial with, I want to say it was Marines. No. It was at Fort Bragg with some special operators there as a preventative method of treating these things. Did really, really well. Warrior Angels, who are the people that I'm associated with, they said, this is fantastic. We have to get this out to other people, because the DOD isn't going to pay for it. The VA is not going to pay for it. Even insurance doesn't pay for it. So they raise money and put veterans through this program, this protocol. And yeah, like I said, we have fantastic outcomes. So what we're looking to do is to make a facility down in Texas, like a legit, I don't remember the name that we're looking for now, but it's basically a Warrior Angels facility, heart and mind clinic down in Texas, with this bill that we're trying to get passed to offer this to as many veterans as possible. And we'll start with that area. And my thoughts are we'll see this, go national, hopefully. I mean, side effects, None. Side effects are I sleep every night. I don't have nightmares. I don't even crave alcohol, right? I'm in North Carolina. We're a big bourbon area, and I enjoy it, but the feeling of having, more than one or two is negative. Like I don't enjoy it. And that's only happened since I've been through the program. Um, Anxiety is near zero. Sense of well-being is fantastic. I mean, it's I don't see anything negative coming from it, only positive. So very exciting stuff.
I'm curious about the fingerprint that you mentioned. I
Sure.
guess if you would call it a baseline for diagnoses, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So
have we worked backward on that at all? And like we know anecdotally what the stimulus are and the deficits supplementally and hormonally and injury to the brain and stuff like that causes a lot of this stuff. But
yes.
I haven't seen anybody work backwards as of yet and develop like a true prophylaxis for this stuff. Like how can we have infantry and operators going fucking full blast and still and avoid, I guess, or mitigate at least some of the worst symptoms of this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I just haven't
I like
seen
the
that.
way you put that. I like that backwards, and that's exactly what he did. You're looking at, so when you have a concussive injury, right, blast injury, even like I said, there's a documentary actually I forgot they put out last year called Quiet Explosions. You can see it on Amazon Prime, and they get really detailed into it. But one of the people they were working with was a woman from I believe the Naval Academy who was a rape victim, and her symptoms and her blood work is almost identical to someone who was in a blast injury.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets really deep into neurophysiology, but what you have to look at is we'll look at the like a blast injury. You have cell death, right, in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And those cells, they
Encephalopathy,
basic,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's CTE.
Mm.
They basically decompose, and you have these what do we call it? There's a word for it that I'm just drawing a blank, but you have the metabolic derivatives of that cell death, which leads to a non-permissive environment. Basically, this inflammation begets more inflammation, and it causes more damage.
And not just that, but your brain is hardwired to be as efficient as possible. So when it finds a damaged place, eventually it'll stop sending electrical signals there altogether, right?
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, the brain is, people don't realize it's a supercomputer, right? Well, you're sitting there. In fact, like you take a football player that gets hit too hard. One of the parameters or the recovery is dark room, nothing, not even reading a book, not watching TV, just letting your brain operate on such a low level that you are not basically revving an engine without oil in it. No one does that. I don't know anyone that's ever actually followed a protocol to that degree, but that's what you're looking at, because like I said, the environment of the brain is so toxic at that point that it only sets up more damage. There's a chemical called fractalene. You can look up. It's like I said, you get real deep into the neurophysiology, but the blood work can actually identify that, and then the I guess we'll call it supplements, except for we use something called clomiphene, which will tell your own body to create testosterone. We use that, and then we use actual testosterone replacement. Take that out of the equation. Everything is just building blocks to repair your brain. Like I said, the pregnenolone, DHEA. There's a few others that we use, and then there's just vitamins that help reduce inflammation, turmeric, fish oil. There's a doctor named Mike Lewis. He wrote a book, and I might be getting that name wrong, but he wrote a book called When Brains Collide, and he uses high dose fish oil. When I say high dose, right, you might take, I don't know, 1,000 milligrams a day. He's using 50,000, 100,000 milligrams in some of these brain injured people, and they're freaking out, right? The other doctors are saying, what are you doing? You're going to cause a brain bleed. Because it can thin out your blood, but it doesn't. And he sees recovery in his people. So, these are things that are available to us at pennies on the dollar that have fantastic outcomes. And it's a no-brainer to look into it, because what you have to look at in medicine is is what I'm doing. So what am I doing? Am I creating harm? Am I possibly causing harm? Or if the answer is no, and don't get me wrong, you can cause harm by giving someone a Tylenol,
Mm.
but is my inaction also causing harm? And when you look at the data, when you look at people who are treated with the typical SSRI, SNRI, anxiolytics, hypnotics, pain meds, gabapentin, things like that, when you look at their outcome and their quality of life versus people that we put on these alternative therapies, it's night and day. It's not even close. So it's like, as a medical provider, I have to ask myself, which direction am I going to go? Am I going to go where I'm seeing people recover and I'm seeing the data and I'm seeing these like Andrew went and ended up getting his MBA at, I don't remember what school he went to, but a lot of these guys end up doing that. They become high performers again because that's who they were, because we restored their brains to where they used to be, versus the person who, or myself, when I was 10 years younger than I am now, and I'm falling asleep and I'm not present in anything in my life. Like where should I go with that? And the answer is I'm going to where the quality of life is.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's there's a few key things. Um, if you find yourself feeling that way, that you can do. I mean, the first one is to make sure that your diet is good. Um, if you're not, if you're not getting the right stuff into your body, then your body's not going to function the way it's supposed to. That seems obvious, but we seem to forget about it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then, the hormone imbalances, particularly for males who have gotten out of the military in the past 15 to 20 years, are fucked. And it's not just the military, by the way, it's the broader community. I think the average 21-year-old today has 40% less testosterone than their counterpart in 2001.
Yep. It's dropping. It's dropping every generation. Yeah. It's going down.
That's obviously not great. Mm-hmm. And there's all sorts of causes for it, environmental factors, foods, parabens, and all kinds of products and stuff like that are definitely causing it, heavy metals as well. But it's not like polio. I mean, it's pretty easy to fix this shit. There's a number of different, there's some stuff you can do with your diet. There's stuff you can do regarding your sleep when you wake up and what you do when you wake up. And then, of course, there's testosterone replacement therapy that can fix this stuff. You don't have to suffer anymore. You know what I mean?
No, not at all.
And there's so many, like, insurance doesn't cover a lot of this stuff on the medical side, but it's really not that expensive, to be honest.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to misquote, but we put people through for, a couple $1,000s, and that might be a year of therapy. So, yeah, it's not considering, right? Considering, I can put you on a anti-inflammatory agent that through the magic of insurance and that whole game will end up costing you $20,000 this year. You know what I mean? So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it really isn't. Not to mention, you're putting out, the other end of this is you have productive members of society. These aren't disabled people. These aren't even broken people. These are people that, through whatever luck they had, that they found themselves in this situation. But like I said, they're all high performers again. They're all doing fantastic, and there's no reason not to try it. And if I was seeing in the data, okay, we have, some people that are responding actually, even remotely poorly, then you would have to think about it and weigh it. But no, these people are doing great. And, we have Gordon started this, I want to say 16 years ago, maybe longer. And, the data's there, and it speaks for itself.
And it's, unfortunately, I guess it's mostly common sense, which means that the broader medical community, as it is in the West these days, is just not going to do it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like this whole natural immunity thing. The reason that was a taboo subject for the last 3 years is because it's fucking free. You know what I mean? That's a big problem for us right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I don't know what contracts the VA and the government had with companies that make SSRIs and shit, or if it's just a coincidence. You don't need to be conspiratorial. Either way, it was a complete failure on their part. And, that is just what happens when you don't take control of your own life. It's the mantra of this show is that you can bitch and moan about your plight and, You can whine about your rights and how they're being violated, and you can stand around and wait for somebody else to secure them for you, and you will be a subject under their rule, or you can secure them yourself by performing the responsibilities required of you, and you'll be a citizen of a country, right? So there's two very different paths you can take. One requires a little bit of effort. The other one requires that you surrender your rights, you know, a little at a time throughout your entire life, and then your kids probably have to go fight a war to get them back. That's kind of what we've seen historically. And it really troubles me how so many people in the veteran community have given in to the former, thinking that this is a hopeless situation and blah, blah, blah. There's nothing I can do about this. When in reality, you're the only one who could do something about this.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's been one of the, I guess, good things about doing the podcast is, so we started the show, I don't know now, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We were working for Donnie O'Malley's nonprofit there called Irreverent Warriors. And we would bring people on. And this is a testament, I think, to our generation of veterans. We would bring a lot of people on that created their own solutions, right? So they identified a problem and they came up with a solution, whether that's war horses for veterans, backpacks for life. I mean, even Irreverent Warriors, perfect example right there, where they said, we're not gonna follow the traditional, method, which I won't bring up their names, but we'll just say sitting in a dank bar, having a beer, somewhere in rural America versus strapping on some silkies, getting out there on a hike with your brothers and sisters, where you can take off that armor, that armor that you build up in the civilian world, right? And anyone who's been in the civilian world after the military knows what I'm talking about. You're in that board meeting or whatever it is, and someone says something and that dark humor comes in and you're like, oh God, do I want to just make a comment right now? And you can't, and you feel like a fish out of water. So you go to these events and you feel fantastic, right? You're amongst your brothers and sisters again. You can relive that moment. Well, and that's just one, I guess we'll call it microcosm of the really at this point hundreds of thousands of organizations that are out there, grassroots that are men and women who are helping each other out. And it's just, there was no shortage of people. And that's the thing. Like I used to do, you don't really do this anymore, but it used to be very interview based on those VSOs. All I had to do was go on Twitter or Instagram, and there was always, someone starting something somewhere. And, listening to their stories and their motivations on how they did it and why they did it was really uplifting.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about, we've mentioned it on the show before, and we had Donnie on before, but, tell me about Irreverent Warriors and what it is and how people can find it, because I think it is very beneficial to a lot of folks.
Yeah, it really is. I was up at Burbiz. I had worked on, and that's, just one of those things. I don't know how the hell it happened, but somehow I started producing podcasts and stuff, maybe 2014, I guess. And I was taking a break with that, and I headed up to Burbiz just to kind of check it out and see which direction I want to take this in. And there I met Donnie, a guy named Dan Maller, John Acevedo. They're all with Vet TV. And they told me they were next to this thing that said Irreverent Warriors, and one of the guys was wearing silky shorts. And Burbiz is usually like, fancy pants, you're dressed to the nines. And so he started telling me about it. He's like, it really is a place because every day you wake up and you play a role, right? Today I'm going to play physician assistant. Later on, I'm going to be playing dad. Maybe I'll play neighbor and help my neighbor fix something over there, but you're always playing these different roles. The one role that we all thrived in, that we enjoyed, at least most of us did, was the role of a veteran, being around our brothers and sisters, active duty too. And they basically recreated that in a Silkies hike. In the day, it was, let me think, 22 kilometers with 22 kilograms, but that kind of got thrown out. No one really does that anymore. It's really just throwing on some silky shorts, and hiking with your brothers and sisters. And, the community comes out, they support you. There's a lot of volunteers that help keep these things. And these things are a massive undertaking. In fact, our producer on the show is the lead coordinator for the Raleigh hike down here. And I mean, it's a monumental undertaking, and it's hard work, and it's all volunteer, and they keep doing it, and they keep going out there, and they keep pushing these events. We started with, I don't know, we'll say 2 or 3 hikes. I think it was one hike out in San Diego. And the last I checked, there was over 100 hikes last year, maybe 130 across the country. And this year, I don't know what the number is this year. We used to do the podcast for them, and I was more attached with them at the time. Like I had more of an idea of what was going on. But since we went over to Compound Media, I've pulled away a little bit. So I'm not exactly sure, but I know they're growing, and they do hikes in Guam, Hawaii.
Yeah.
They did one in Normandy, France. So yeah, if you're interested, the only requirement is that you're a veteran or active duty. And just look up irreverentwarriors.com, and there'll be a list of hikes there. It's free. You can donate, which helps out a lot. And then if you're a civilian, you want to help, there's a way to do that too. So
cool. Yeah. It's a fun program. I know the people that run it here in Texas, they have a good time. Although you got to be careful what time of year you do it here in Texas, because it's hot as fuck.
God. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to force march in 110 degrees anymore. I'm done with that bullshit.
Yeah.
And then the name of the show, the name of the podcast is 21 Gun Podcast. Tell me about the show and what it's about and kind of who you interview and stuff.
Well, it started off, just a hobby, really. I had a camera. I had a guy that helped me out, and it was really just to kind of connect people with VSOs, veteran service organizations, grassroots ones. I liked the ones that, if I saw someone at a grocery store with a T-shirt on, I'd talk to him and be like, hey, come on the show, tell us about what you have going on. We immediately got picked up by Reverent Warriors. I pitched the show to them, and they're like, yeah, we'd like to spread this information. Worked for them for a while. The show started changing. I want to say maybe 2020, when the shit hit the fan. Things got weird. And, we started talking about our responsibility as veterans, the Constitution, what did we pledge our lives for? So we got into some hot topic issues, and I didn't want to bring that down onto Reverent Warriors. They're nonpartisan, non-political. They rely on donors and stuff, and I wasn't going to, cause any sort of issues there. So we went independent for about 2 weeks. This is actually kind of a cool story for me, because I got into this originally because way back in, the 90s, late 90s, there was a duo called Opie and Anthony, and they were out of New York City, hugely popular. They gave Howard Stern a run for his money, and I listened to him all the time. At the time, I was working, digging holes around Boston, Mass. They were really like a working class duo, and they were just great. When I went into the military, obviously I couldn't listen to them as much. And so I deployed, and I contacted their producer, and I was like, hey, can you send us CDs? I'll pass them around the squadron, and we'll kind of keep, it'll allow us to feel like we're home again. They're like, sure. And they sent that stuff out, whatever. Fast forward to when we separated from Irreverent Warriors. And I was like, I'm going to reach out to that guy again and see if we'll have him on the show and we can talk about those things. So we had him on, we had a great time. And then they came back a few weeks later and they said, hey, we like your show. We'd like you to come work for Anthony. Anthony Cumia is the Anthony of Opie and Anthony. And I'm like, this dude was my hero growing up, and you want me to work for him? So, of course I said yes. And we started producing a show for them over on what's called Compound Media, which is a free speech, absolutist organization. And we basically have on anybody that has an opinion. And we've had some pretty strong opinions. Probably the most strong was we had Kurt Schilling on, who is,
I know Kurt.
He is, yeah, he's a great guy. He's a great guy and a constitutionalist through and through. So we have veterans on still. We have anyone really. If we have a booking agent and they say, hey, we got this person, do you want them to come on? And we're like, yeah, let's bring them on, especially if they're controversial. That's the point of it, right?
Yeah, Compound doesn't really shy. Well, Anthony especially, he has me and my co-host Ross on pretty regularly, so I know he doesn't.
Oh, okay,
cool. I know he doesn't give a shit about who comes on.
No, he really doesn't.
Because we say we say horrible things on his show. But it's like, it's kind of like being back in a fucking team room or something. Just talking shit. Chrissy Mayer's a good friend of ours as well. She was here last week, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's I like Compound Media. There aren't a whole lot of places you can go where, people have this idea of civil discourse, like it's just going to be two posh British people sitting in leather sofas across from each other and like, yes, okay, it's okay. But, civil discourse can also be calling each other retards, I think.
Yeah.
But just don't get butthurt about it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's stupid. Shut up. But then afterwards, you're fine. We have to be able to have conversations and strip down all the pretense, I think, for it to be effective. And all this, all these people with hurt feelings just drive me crazy these days.
Yeah, it's rough. The two things I struggle with, a couple things. The first is the echo chamber, right? And I realize that being on compound, I'm talking to my audience, right? So I don't feel like I'm reaching people that need to be part of the conversation. People that need to say, all right, I'm going to put my own biases aside and listen to what these people have to say. And that's a bit of a struggle because we've separated really from all. We don't do really YouTube. We don't do anything public anymore. And on one side, it's great because there's no stress, right? There's no stress of being canceled. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but we're amongst friends when we do our show over there. The other thing too is I struggle with this a lot, and it was, it almost cost the show for a while, is what am I putting out in the world, right? Am I just coming on and bitching and not giving any solutions? Am I just echoing the libertarian, I guess we'll call it, arguments that we hear all over the place, or am I I guess contributing to the conversation? And that's it's a struggle, but in the same sense, I feel like if I don't talk and we don't have these guests on and we don't do the show that we do, I'm just laying over, exposing my belly and saying, okay, I'm too worried about what could happen if I speak what is, our truth, and I'm going to suffer repercussions for it. So I'm not going to talk. And it's like, I can't do that. I see so much insanity in the world, right? That it has to be talked about. It has to be discussed. Because if you don't, then it becomes the norm. Society what do they call those? The mores, the social norms shift to an area that you don't even recognize. And you have to stand your ground and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play that game. You're free to be whoever you want to be. Absolutely. I'll go to the grave defending your right to be who you want to be. But you don't have the right to dictate mores and values that I grew up with, right? I'm going to celebrate the 4th of July. My kids know the Pledge of Allegiance. They respect the founding fathers. And yeah, I'm not going to not fight for that. So the show's not going anywhere. But
yeah, it's so there's this principle in Buddhism, and I guess to some degree Hindi, called satyagraha, and it's what the civil rights movement referred to as passive resistance, I guess. That's kind of a reductive translation of what it means, though. What it really means is holding firmly to the truth. That's what it means. And the background of this ancient nonviolent resistance isn't that you simply comply with things. Like, it's not that you do sit-ins and stuff like that. Like, that's part of it, I guess, but it's it's primarily about holding on to what's true, and that means behaving in a way that you think supports the truth and ethics and things like that, and accepting the consequences, whatever they happen to be. And it's not unique to Buddhism or even the East, because if you're a Christian person, you'll remember, I think it's 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, where Paul's talking to the Thessalonians, and he uses this phrase, study all things and hold fast to what's true, I think is the phrase, something like that, or hold fast to what's good. Maybe it depends on how you translate that. But this is a principle that persists throughout all philosophy, no matter what region of the world, no matter what religion it happened to be a part of. And it's that truth matters, right? It is our guide stone. And things done in defense of truth are typically good. And it's not the worst way, or it's not the worst principle to organize your life around, right? And we're having a lot of trouble with that these days. We live in a very delusional society right now, one that is failing the test of the is-ought fallacy. Like, we think that because life's not fair, that we should somehow manipulate life to make it fair. And that is dumb as fuck. I mean, that's the same mistake people make with communism. Like, oh yeah, let's make a utopia. Like, that's not how life works, right? So it's good that there are people out there kind of questioning the narrative.
Sure. Yeah. Because, I think inherently as humans, we know truth, right? Even as a little kid, when you did something, you knew what was right and what was wrong. And I don't know, I suppose that the other side of the equation might not, I don't know if they recognize that, burning down a store is not on the side of righteousness, but on the side of evil. I don't know. I would like to think deep down inside they do know that. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe it is that shift of mores that is leading people to violence and I guess a culture of violence versus a society of truth. And I'm fully aware that saying I'm on the side of truth, what that means. I mean, everyone's version of truth, I guess, is based on your own experiences. But I don't know. I think there is a universal truth. I think there's a universal right and wrong. And I don't know. I don't know what is causing it. I don't know what the end game is. It seems like a lot of people in power they're almost hedging their bets on the negative. They're hedging their bets on violence and destruction, as if it is the way to cleanse our society of some sort of inherent evil that we have. And it's scary. It's scary, especially when you have little kids, because you're like, well, what world am I leaving for them? And it doesn't appear to be going in the right direction.
Well, I think it's more of a distracting tool, to be honest, than I don't think that these people feel righteous. I think they think they're the ruling class and they deserve to be able to mandate things like that. And, with that kind of ego comes this moralization of immoral behavior. We see it throughout history, right? It's like, if you can convince, it's where fundamentalism comes from, whether it's religious or otherwise. It's like, if you're that convinced that you have the moral high ground, you can do almost anything, no matter how evil it is, to maintain that moral high ground. And that's a big fucking problem, right? And
what's the end game? The end game's a bloody battlefield.
Yeah, it's not great. But it's good that we're able to have conversations like this and, talk to people, let them say whatever the fuck they want, frankly, because I'd rather know what you're thinking than have to guess. So I'm glad that you're out there doing it. Tell everybody, before we get out of here, where they can find you, where they can find your show.
The best way to follow us is on Twitter, because we know how open a society that is. Lots of good things come from Twitter, but at 21 Gun Podcast, and that just links us to everywhere. We're mainly on behind a paywall over on Compound Media, but the more important work that I focus on is the healing brains, and to find them, just put Warrior Angels Foundation in Google, warriorangelsfoundation.com. And see what we got going on there. Next week's a big week for us. Like I said, if we can get through the Senate, hopefully I'll be down there. I think you're down in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I might be down in Austin. That's where the State House is, right?
Yep.
I might be down there next week. If I'm not there, Warrior Angels are definitely gonna be down there. Hopefully getting heard. So yeah.
Well, cool. Look, thanks, man. I appreciate you coming today. Great conversation. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, anytime. And thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.